I met Rachel during my final year at Stanford while pursuing my engineering degree. She was studying psychology and had this magnetic energy that drew everyone to her. With her striking blue eyes and infectious laugh, I was instantly captivated by her presence in that crowded coffee shop. Unlike other women I'd dated, Rachel seemed genuinely fascinated by my dreams of launching a tech startup focused on renewable energy solutions. She would spend hours listening to my ideas, offering insightful feedback that actually improved my business model. When I finally graduated and took the terrifying leap into entrepreneurship, Rachel stood firmly by my side through those brutal first years. The early days of my company, Green Tech Solutions, were a complete nightmare of 90-hour workweeks, rejection emails, and constant financial anxiety. I remember one particularly devastating night when our biggest potential investor pulled out at the last minute. I was ready to give up everything. That's when Rachel showed up at my tiny office with takeout food, encouraging words, and an unexpected offer that seemed like the ultimate sacrifice. "Let me put my psychology career on hold to help you build this," she suggested with such conviction. "I can handle administrative work while you focus on the technical development." Her support felt like a lifeline during those desperate times. After 3 years of struggle, Green Tech finally secured a major contract with a multinational corporation looking to reduce their carbon footprint. Suddenly, we weren't just surviving, we were thriving. Rachel and I moved from our cramped apartment to a beautiful home in the suburbs of Austin. We got married in a picturesque ceremony surrounded by friends and family who had witnessed our journey. Life seemed perfect as we settled into our new community, with Rachel quickly becoming involved in local environmental advocacy groups. She organized community cleanups, spoke at sustainability conferences, and became somewhat of a local celebrity for her passionate commitment to green living. What impressed everyone most was how Rachel balanced her environmental work with being an incredibly supportive partner. She managed our home with remarkable efficiency, making sure I could focus entirely on scaling the business. Her talent for networking also opened doors to influential connections that ultimately helped secure additional contracts. From the outside, we were the perfect power couple. The innovative engineer and his charismatic, environmentally conscious wife. People frequently commented on how fortunate we were to have found partners who complemented each other so beautifully. As Green Tech expanded to multiple states and our financial situation stabilized, Rachel began expressing interest in understanding the company's financial structure. Initially, I was thrilled by her enthusiasm, believing it signaled a deeper investment in our shared future. We would sit together reviewing quarterly reports, discussing growth strategies, and planning long-term investments. She asked thoughtful questions about revenue streams, profit margins, and equity distribution, all perfectly reasonable inquiries from someone who had contributed significantly to building the business. There was nothing suspicious about her curiosity at that point. Around our 4th anniversary, Rachel suggested we attend a prestigious environmental conference in Colorado. The event would be an excellent networking opportunity, connecting us with potential investors passionate about renewable energy. During the 4-day conference, Rachel introduced me to countless influential figures in the environmental sector, seemingly dedicated to advancing our company's mission. I remember feeling immensely grateful watching her effortlessly navigate conversations with industry leaders, always steering discussions toward potential collaborations with Green Tech. Her networking skills were undeniably valuable to our continued success. However, I couldn't ignore a strange uneasiness that emerged during that trip. Several times I noticed Rachel disappearing for hours, claiming she was attending specialized workshops that conflicted with my schedule. When I casually inquired about these sessions later, her responses were uncharacteristically vague, lacking the detailed insights she typically shared. One evening, I returned to our hotel room earlier than expected and found her hastily ending a phone call, looking startled by my presence. When asked about it, she laughed it off as just conference logistics, but something in her expression didn't quite match her explanation. The subtle changes in Rachel's behavior became increasingly difficult to ignore after our return from Colorado. Our once effortless conversations grew stilted and superficial. When I'd ask about her day with environmental groups, she'd provide brief, generic responses that lacked her usual enthusiasm and detail. More concerning was how she began creating distance between us physically. The casual touches, spontaneous hugs, and affectionate gestures that had always characterized our relationship gradually disappeared. These changes were so incremental that for months I convinced myself I was imagining things, that work stress was making me paranoid. What really triggered my suspicion was Rachel's sudden fixation on our finances. She started asking increasingly specific questions about our investments, company valuation, and personal savings. Information she had never shown particular interest in before. One night I discovered her photographing financial documents I had left on my desk. When confronted, she claimed she was organizing our records for tax purposes, but her defensive tone suggested otherwise. Around the same time, she began taking mysterious calls in another room, speaking in hushed tones that would immediately shift to normal volume when I approached. Rachel's schedule grew increasingly erratic, with unexplained absences becoming the norm rather than the exception. She'd leave for environmental committee meetings, dressed in casual business attire, but return hours later in completely different clothes, dismissing my questions with flimsy excuses about coffee spills or unexpected rain. Her weekend activities became especially suspicious. She'd mentioned group hikes with her advocacy friends, yet the photos she shared never seemed to include any actual hiking trails or other people. The inconsistencies were mounting, but I still resisted drawing the obvious conclusion. The real red flag appeared when Rachel started treating her phone like a state secret. She added a new passcode, positioned the screen away from me while texting, and never left it unattended. Occasionally, I'd notice notifications from someone named Alex appearing on her screen, which she would quickly dismiss if I was nearby. When I casually mentioned this Alex person during dinner one night, Rachel became visibly flustered, explaining that he was just a new environmental consultant she was working with. Her reaction seemed disproportionate to such an innocent connection. My breaking point came when Rachel returned home from an emergency advocacy meeting well after midnight. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smudged, and there was a distinct cologne scent clinging to her clothes, a woodsy fragrance I definitely didn't wear. When I commented on the late hour, she snapped defensively. Maybe if you weren't always buried in work, you'd understand how demanding environmental activism can be. The deflection was textbook, turning my reasonable concern into an accusation of neglect. That night, as she showered, I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I would investigate my wife. Rather than confronting Rachel with my suspicions and giving her an opportunity to craft more elaborate lies, I began quietly gathering information. I reviewed our credit card statements, finding charges for upscale restaurants on nights she claimed to be at community meetings. Our shared location history revealed frequent visits to an upscale apartment complex across town, always on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons for precisely 2 to 3 hours. The technological footprints were impossible to explain away, but I needed absolute certainty before taking any action. One Thursday afternoon, I left work early and parked across from the mysterious apartment complex that had become Rachel's regular destination. At exactly 2:15 p.m., her car pulled into the parking lot. 5 minutes later, a Tesla Model S parked beside her, and out stepped a tall, well-dressed man with salt and pepper hair. From my position, I photographed them embracing intimately before entering the building together, their body language revealing a familiarity that shattered any remaining doubts. For 2 excruciating hours, I sat in my car, methodically documenting times and taking photos as evidence, feeling my entire world collapse around me. After witnessing Rachel and her lover together, I continued my investigation with cold precision. Through careful observation of her unlocked iPad and occasional access to her carelessly left open email, I discovered the man's identity. Alexander Bennett, a wealthy environmental investor we had met at the Colorado conference. The painful irony wasn't lost on me. Rachel had used an environmental conference, representing our shared values and company, to begin an affair with someone who could potentially benefit her financially. The betrayal ran deeper than mere infidelity. It was a calculated exploitation of everything we had built together. What hurt most wasn't just discovering the physical affair, but uncovering Rachel's long-term strategy. In text messages she exchanged with Alexander, she outlined her plan to leave me at the optimal moment, after she had gathered enough financial information to secure maximum alimony. "He's too absorbed in growing the company to notice anything," she wrote in one particularly painful message. "Once I file, I'll push for half the business assets. The Texas courts favor spouses who supported careers." Reading those words, seeing how clinically she discussed dismantling our marriage while simultaneously planning her new life with Alexander, something fundamentally changed within me. The woman I loved had died in my eyes. Rather than confronting Rachel immediately and potentially alerting her to change her strategy, I decided to prepare methodically for what was coming. I consulted with financial advisors about legally protecting my assets without raising suspicions. Over several weeks, I restructured certain aspects of my business, accelerating debt payments, prepaying office leases, and reinvesting profits back into company equipment and expansion plans. None of these moves were illegal or unethical. They were simply sound business decisions that coincidentally reduced the apparent value of assets that could be divided in a divorce. Throughout this preparation period, I maintained a perfectly normal demeanor at home. I didn't withdraw emotionally, didn't confront Rachel about her increasingly obvious lies, and didn't give her any reason to suspect I knew about her affair or her plans. This performance was perhaps the most difficult challenge I've ever faced. Smiling at the woman who was actively plotting to destroy me, discussing future plans we both knew would never materialize, and pretending I was completely oblivious to her betrayal. Every conversation felt like walking through an emotional minefield, but I remained focused on the endgame. Just as I finished putting my financial protection strategy in place, Rachel decided to accelerate her timeline. I arrived home from work one evening to find her sitting in our living room with a peculiar expression, a mixture of smugness and feigned regret that instantly told me this was the moment she had been planning for months. "Nathan, we need to talk," she began, her voice artificially gentle. "I'm pregnant, but it's not yours. I've been seeing someone else, and I want a divorce." She delivered this life-altering announcement with the emotional investment of someone ordering coffee, watching carefully for my reaction. When Rachel dropped her bombshell announcement, expecting me to crumble into pieces, I managed the performance of a lifetime. I let a moment of shock cross my face, allowed my hands to tremble slightly, then slowly nodded as though processing this unexpected news. "I see," was all I said initially, studying her expression as confusion replaced her anticipated triumph. She had expected tears, accusations, perhaps even begging, anything but this unnervingly calm acceptance. This clearly wasn't how she had rehearsed this moment in her mind, and her momentary disorientation gave me immense satisfaction. Rachel quickly recovered and pressed forward with her prepared script, adding the financial demand I knew was coming. "You should know I'll be seeking substantial alimony," she stated confidently. "I put my career on hold to support you building green tech. Under Texas law, I'm entitled to half of everything." Her tone was almost educational, as though she were explaining an unfortunate but inevitable business transaction. I simply maintained eye contact and asked evenly, "And Alexander Bennett? Does he know you're planning to cash in on our marriage while carrying his child?" The color drained from her face as her carefully constructed narrative collapsed instantly. What followed was Rachel's desperate attempt to regain control of the situation. She cycled through denial, anger, and finally, a pathetic attempt at gaslighting, claiming I was paranoid and invasive for investigating her. I calmly reached for my laptop and opened a folder containing every piece of evidence I had collected: photographs of her entering Alexander's apartment, screenshots of their explicit text messages, receipts from hotels they had visited, and most damning of all, her own words detailing her plans to exploit our divorce for financial gain. Tuesdays and Thursdays, Always from 2 to 4 p.m. Very consistent, Rachel. You didn't even try to vary your schedule, I commented casually. Rachel's transformation was remarkable, from confident manipulator to cornered victim in seconds. How long have you known? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Long enough to protect myself, I replied. Her momentary vulnerability quickly hardened into defiance as she attempted one final power play. It doesn't matter what you know. Texas is a no-fault divorce state. Your evidence of my affair means nothing in court. I'm still entitled to my share. She was technically correct about Texas divorce law, but severely underestimated my preparation and determination to ensure she wouldn't profit from her betrayal. The following weeks were a strange dance of legal maneuvers and calculated moves. Rachel moved out immediately, straight into Alexander's luxurious apartment. She hired an aggressive divorce attorney known for securing substantial settlements for spouses. I interviewed multiple lawyers before finding one who appreciated my proactive financial restructuring and understood my goal wasn't just minimizing financial damage, but ensuring Rachel gained nothing from her elaborate scheme. The contrast between our approaches was telling. She sought maximum financial benefit, while I simply wanted to ensure justice prevailed. The divorce proceedings were predictably contentious. Rachel's attorney presented her as the sacrificial wife who had abandoned her promising psychology career to support my entrepreneurial ambitions, arguing she deserved substantial compensation for her contributions to green tech's success. My lawyer methodically presented evidence of my recent business restructuring and reinvestment strategies, all legitimate business decisions that coincidentally reduced apparent personal wealth. Though the judge acknowledged my frustration regarding Rachel's infidelity, he ultimately ruled according to Texas law. Rachel would receive monthly alimony payments of $3,800 for 3 years, significantly less than she had anticipated, but still a painful reminder of her betrayal. What Rachel didn't realize was that financial consequences were only the beginning of her reckoning. Throughout our marriage, she had carefully cultivated an identity as an environmental champion in our community, speaking at sustainability conferences, leading conservation initiatives, and building relationships with prominent environmental activists and donors. Her reputation for integrity and ethical leadership was central to her self-image and future plans with Alexander, who moved in elite environmental philanthropy circles. This carefully constructed persona was her true vulnerability, and I knew exactly how to exploit it. The day after our divorce was finalized, I compiled a comprehensive dossier containing irrefutable evidence of Rachel's affair, including timestamps showing she had conducted her relationship during environmental fundraisers and community events she claimed to be organizing. I added financial records demonstrating how she had misrepresented attendance at several environmental conferences that were actually romantic getaways with Alexander. Most damaging were screenshots of messages where she mocked dedicated environmentalists as naive tree huggers while strategizing how to leverage their connections for personal gain. This information package was delivered simultaneously to every major environmental organization in our region. The community response was swift and merciless. The Environmental Leadership Council immediately removed Rachel from her position as Sustainability Ambassador. The Green Future Foundation rescinded her invitation to speak at their annual conference. Former colleagues and friends who had trusted her leadership distanced themselves publicly, unwilling to associate with someone who had used environmental causes as cover for personal misconduct. Even Alexander, who had seemed so committed during their affair, began reconsidering their relationship as his own reputation suffered through association. Within weeks, Rachel's carefully constructed social and professional network completely collapsed. When the environmental community's rejection coincided with Alexander's wavering commitment, Rachel's situation deteriorated rapidly. He had apparently expected their relationship to enhance his environmental credentials, not damage them. Their romantic narrative of finding true love crumbled under public scrutiny and professional consequences. 3 months after our divorce, Alexander ended their relationship, unwilling to weather the professional fallout or support Rachel and their unborn child. Her carefully orchestrated exit strategy, leaving me for a wealthy, connected partner while securing substantial alimony, had backfired spectacularly. She now faced single parenthood, professional ostracism, and dramatically reduced financial support. The journey I've shared today isn't just about betrayal and accountability. It's about reclaiming your power when someone tries to destroy everything you've built. Looking back now, watching Rachel's carefully calculated plans collapse was certainly satisfying, but the real victory was rediscovering my own strength throughout this ordeal. The question I pose to you is this: when faced with devastating betrayal, will you allow yourself to be victimized, or will you strategically protect what you've worked so hard to build? The most valuable lesson from this experience is understanding that true protection comes from preparation, not reaction. Had I confronted Rachel immediately, acting on emotion rather than strategy, the outcome would have been entirely different. Instead, by gathering evidence, restructuring assets legally, and timing my response perfectly, I ensured justice prevailed. What steps are you taking today to protect your future from potential betrayal? How carefully are you documenting important aspects of your personal and professional life? This story ultimately represents a powerful truth. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't loud and dramatic. It's allowing someone to face the natural consequences of their own actions. Rachel didn't lose everything because I orchestrated an elaborate revenge scheme. She lost everything because her true character was revealed to a community that values authenticity and integrity. Is there an area in your life where you need to step back and allow natural consequences to unfold rather than forcing an outcome? I encourage you to apply these insights to your own relationships and business dealings. Document important conversations. Protect your assets legally. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. Most importantly, never allow someone else's betrayal to define your future or diminish your potential. If you found value in this story, please subscribe to our channel and activate notifications to receive more powerful content designed to help you navigate life's most challenging situations. Your support allows us to continue sharing these transformation stories that might just change your perspective, or even your life.